We've got less than 2 months to go until the release of God of War Ragnarok, and while we're all still probably floored by that amazing story trailer, there's actually a ton of interesting information from other sources that we haven't discussed yet. The game's file size has been revealed, there's been a rework of the experience system and a returning item category from 2018, more character reveals, plus 2 voice actors dropped some new info on the game in recent interviews, which contain some very interesting details on Thor. So a ton to go over. If you're excited for that, then totally leave a like on the video, subscribe to stay up to date on everything God of War Ragnarok, and let's go! Before we get into the video, you can also enter in our giveaway for the digital deluxe edition of the game via the pinned comment. Just make sure you are a subscriber if you want to participate, and we'll reach out to the winner just before launch. The many new locations in the story trailer already suggest that Ragnarok will be massive, and the recently revealed file size hints at that as well. Alikan on Reddit posted this image showing that God of War Ragnarok on PS4 is a little over 90 gigs, which is double the size of the previous game. Now this of course doesn't mean it will be twice as big, but still 90 gigs should mean a pretty huge game. We also got some new gameplay details from the last bit of Game Informer footage that was released. The first thing that caught a lot of people's attention was this XP pop-up after a combat encounter, which shows that Atreus will now be earning experience separate from Kratos. We even see that they earn a different amount of XP as well, so maybe that has to do with how well Atreus performs in a battle, or maybe the boy just gets less experience than Kratos. And with one of the big speculations of course being that Atreus could become a playable character, can we see this as another hint? Well, if I'm being honest, I don't really think so. My take is that we will earn XP for Kratos and Atreus separately so that we can unlock skills at a faster rate. In God of War 2018, you'd have a skill tree for the Leviathan axe, one for barehanded combat and rage, one for the Blades of Chaos, and one for Atreus, but you would have to buy all skills from the same pool of experience. And maybe Santa Monica saw that everyone upgraded Atreus as their final option because, let's be honest, new moves for Kratos are way more exciting than more stun damage on arrows, and decided that in Ragnarok you can improve the boy without impacting the XP you spend on the upgrades for Kratos. And with Atreus' increased versatility in this new game, like his even stronger looking Runic Attacks and him blowing up obstacles in a combat arena, it's actually very likely that he'll have an even bigger skill tree, or maybe even skill trees, when compared to the previous title. And speaking of upgrades, one way you could upgrade your combat capabilities in the previous game was by using talismans. These make you stronger thanks to the extra stats, but more importantly, expand your toolkit with a nice passive buff that would trigger on specific actions, or even active perks like a health burst or a realm shift that slows down time. And while previous Game Informer footage only showed the Runic Attacks, we can clearly see in the new footage that next to the 2 diamond-shaped Runic Attacks there is an octagonal shape with another icon in it. And if you put that next to the HUD from 2018, you can see that it's the exact same spot that was used for talismans in that game. With how similar the HUD is looking to the previous game in general, I think that confirms we can look forward to finding some more exciting talismans to make Kratos even stronger. I also looked at the icons for the specific Runic Attacks in this image, and I think I figured out what one of them is. The top icon, so the light Runic Attack, looks very similar to the Fury of the Ice Troll from the previous game, except there is now a white backdrop for the runic circle around the axe. But judging from this image, it's likely that the circular shockwave attack will return in the sequel. Now the bottom Runic Attack doesn't look like anything we already had in 2018. The closest one I could find is actually Blessing of the Frost, but with the new weapon signature attacks likely taking its place, I think it's pretty clear we're looking at a new heavy Runic Attack here. Shame the clip doesn't show what it does. There's also some interesting environmental details like this boat, that from the looks of it you have to pull over the water with this chain. I think this is the perfect setting for a King of the Hill style encounter like we had with the boat in Helheim for instance, and if we look back at the Game Informer cover, we do actually see that there are Dreki lurking in the waters here, so maybe it's one of them that will come say hello during our boat trip. Another interesting detail in the environment is this glowing slab of stone, which thanks to the small clip from the recent story trailer, we now know are actually objects you were able to throw at enemies, so this is likely a combat arena then. And of course the main point of this new footage was to highlight a couple of the many accessibility options that will be coming to God of War Ragnarok. There's the highly customizable HUD, where we're able to change subtitle size, colors and backgrounds, and increase the size of specific icons on the HUD as well. More extensive options are things like the high contrast mode, which allows you to designate specific types of characters or items with a single color, as you can see here with Kratos in blue and Freya in red. And there are even contextual audio clues that let you know if there is an interactable object nearby. Game Informer also revealed a lot of new options, and we'll leave a link to the full article in the video description. But for instance, there are now puzzle modifications. These can modify specific elements of a puzzle to make them more accessible. In the example here, we see one of those timed bell puzzles you might remember from the previous game, and with puzzle modifications you are able to adjust the timer on these bells so you can give yourself a lot more time to complete the puzzle before it resets. There are also a lot of controls that can be rebound to the touchpad on your controller. We see the navigational assist in action, which is another accessibility feature that turns the camera in the direction of your next objective, but other basic actions like activating your Spartan Rage or the slam attack on the new Stonewall shield can also be bound to the touchpad if you want. Either way, it's great to see that a lot of effort has been made to make sure that as many people as possible will be able to enjoy the game. And while it might not be in accessibility options, thanks to Dutch retailer bol.com, we know the game will have two graphics modes to choose from. Full 4K with a targeted frame rate of 30 FPS or a dynamically upscaled 4K resolution with a targeted frame rate of 60 FPS. Now there is some more info from Mimir's voice actor Alistair Duncan, who recently did an interview with YouTube channel AL Hub. It's really clear from his reactions that he's excited for the game, and while I don't think there was ever much doubt about this, he did also confirm that Mimir's stories will return in God of War Ragnarok. But the thing that got me most excited from this interview was a promise he made to us at the end of it. Listen to this.
Like with the previous game, the surprise
was at the end.
The surprise was all the way through. The surprise was when you first saw Kratos and you saw his son. That was a huge surprise for everybody playing the game. And then the surprises continued all the way through. So I hope that that's going to, I'm going to tell you now, that is going to happen this time around as well. They're going to be big.
So yeah, the fact that he changes his statement from "I think" to "that will happen" really shows a lot of confidence. And let's be honest here, if anyone knows stories, it has to be the smartest man alive. I was already blown away by some of the shots from the story trailer, and we'll leave a link to our full breakdown video of that at the end of this one. But there's actually another interesting quote by a Ragnarok voice actor that tells us a lot more about one of our primary antagonists. Here's Ryan Hurst, voice actor for Thor, talking about how Sony Santa Monica managed to humanize his character.
He has a bit of pathos to him that you wouldn't necessarily expect. That there's some relationships that they investigate where they, with his father, with his wife, and with his daughter, they show this other side of him that I was really interested in, which is that, like, for one, he's a drunk, and he's trying not to be a drunk for his family. Like these very sort of like off-center choices for like a Norse god.
So while he might not be calm and reasonable, there does seem to be a lot more to Thor than meets the eye. Especially interesting here are of course the mentions of his wife Sif and his daughter Thruder, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who according to mythology may or may not be a Valkyrie as well. We don't know if we actually get to see or meet them, but at the very least Thor's relationship to both of them will be explored in Ragnarok. Staying on the note of characters, a recent update to the IMDb page gave us some new info on appearing characters and enemy types as well. We now know that Mist, one of the two Valkyries from the story trailer, will be played by Mara Junot, and we of course saw her appear next to Rist, voiced by Erica Lindbeck, as discussed in our previous video. There's also been some changes on previously confirmed roles, as actors who were first listed as Berserkers are now credited as Raiders, which I think might actually be these more regular warriors that we've seen appear in multiple places. Likewise, mentions of Mystics have been replaced with Light Elves, so likely that Mystic was just a cryptic placeholder name, although I do still think it's weird that before the changes Alex Lay was listed as the and not a Mystic. And while it might at first seem very interesting that there are new actors listed for both Freya and Atreus, I think the previs part here is meant to indicate that these actors helped in the pre-visualization process, which is where artists make a rough first draft of a scene in 3D to get an idea for how the finished product might look. But we did get another character reveal as part of the God of War Ragnarok family portrait series. This is a series of portraits by various artists that will be released over the coming weeks, and this wonderful piece by Emma Rios is all about about the dwarves. We of course immediately recognize Brock and Sindri, as well as Durlin, who first showed up in the game's reveal trailer, but this final character with the tongs is someone I don't think we've seen before. It looks like she's a female dwarf, and I assume the collection of tools she's sitting next to also belong to her, so she's definitely a craftswoman of some sort. Also interesting is the fact that the Leviathan axe, or at least a weapon that looks very similar to it, is leaning on the chest she's sitting on, which might mean that she'll have some ideas for an upgrade or two as well. Plus, it has to be said, but I'm of course extremely curious about the good boy sleeping next to her with his little pouch of tools. I really hope we get to pet him. And I think the final portrait in the series will also be one to watch out for. Drawn by manga artist Shuei Ishida, the family portrait of the Aesir will release on October 4th, with a blog post noting that the Aesir are the most powerful family in the 9 realms, led by Odin the Allfather. Which means we'll get another and hopefully better look at the big man himself, although I'm assuming it will be in a very different style than how we see him in the game. Let's just hope he's not hiding his face in the shadows again. Anyway, when we get more info on God of War Ragnarok, we will of course let you know here, so subscribe to miss nothing and leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. If you want, you can watch a previous one where we break down all the important details from that recent story trailer by clicking on the screen. I'll see you in the next one, goodbye.